Good morning, Miramar, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Tamara G. As always, you can check us out on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City of Miramar. And with us today, we have not from our city, but from one of our sister cities, we like to call them, and a good friend of the City of Miramar. We have Commissioner Melissa P. Dunn from the City of Lauderhill, and she had something very special coming up, Peace Month 2025, with a community rally and an urgent call to end gun violence. So, welcome back. I've had you on the show before, so welcome back to the show, Commissioner Dunn.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
No problem. So this is the third year that you have done this peace rally. And I know that you're inviting, of course, all of South Florida, including our residents here in Miramar, to join you guys. But why did you feel like this is something that you needed to do for your residents and South Florida?
Tamara, gun violence, in my opinion, is a public health emergency. We have seen across the nation a rise in gun violence. And I believe that one thing for us to do is to rally together to call for an end to gun violence. And of course, this affects everybody around the nation.
Yeah. You know what? And I think too, Commissioner Dunn, that a lot of people are under the false impression that it can't happen to me. We just heard of something happening this weekend, downtown Miami after a concert. Now, it didn't have anything to do with the concert, but a young man was shot by a police officer because
Yeah.
of something that happened in traffic. That's, of course, police officer, shooting a gun, but it can happen to anyone at any time, and there's no rhyme or reason for it.
Absolutely. And gun violence is increased across the nation. And certainly it's increased in my city. We had over 140 incidents of gun violence happen in the city of Lauderhill and over 2,000 domestic incidents. Those domestic incidents or just domestic disturbances, not all of them were gun related, but they're violent, right?
Right.
And so part of our mission with the Lauderhill Peace 365 movement is to encourage people, number one, to take a stand against gun violence. But number two is to understand that we each have a responsibility to promote peace. First, within ourselves, within our families, within our neighborhoods. And if every person in Lauderhill and Miramar were to take that approach, listen, let me just be kinder and gentler and more peaceful within myself, that imagine what could happen.
And so this is all happening on Sunday, June 1st. Tell us where people can, come and be a part of this, because I'm sure there are people that are out here that are longing for the same thing you're wanting, which is peace within our families, within our communities, within our lives.
Yes. So it's June 1st, which is a Sunday. So y'all can come out after church starting at 3 o'clock. It's at the Lauderhill City Hall compound, which is located at 5581 West Oakland Park Boulevard, right here in my city of Lauderhill. And so the Peace Rally and Resource Fair will happen on Sunday, Tamara.
Mhm.
But throughout the month, we have workshops. We have workshops every other Wednesday for young people. And we have workshops every other Wednesday for adults, so that you can learn how to harness your emotions, how to manage conflict in a way that doesn't require violence. And then we're going to end the whole month on the 21st of June with a peace garden. We're going to be planting a garden at the Boys and Girls Club. So this is really an opportunity for people to rally together for peace in Lauderhill and across South Florida.
And I know you have a lot of mental health people that are going to be there, a lot of counselors, things like that. And truly what you said is what I feel like is the reason behind a lot of the violence is people don't know how to emote, or they don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
communicate what they're doing. And so the first thing that comes to mind is violence. And that just can't be how a civil society acts.
Absolutely. Can't be our default reaction, right? And so I think that, we have to be able to say, listen, I may not be able to control what other people do, right? But let me start by controlling myself. Let me start by learning how to take care of my own emotions. And let me start by learning the skills necessary in order for me to be more peaceful. Peaceful with me, peaceful with my friends, my families, and my neighbors.
And
And
as
I'm
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, no,
yeah,
go.
and so I really am calling on everyone to rally together on June 1st, and let's take a stance against violence, but more importantly, let's take a stance for peace together, to put the guns down, to and so, as you know, the sign there is
Mhm.
our chief of police that's holding the sign that says guns down, peace up. And that's what we want. We want people to rally together for peace, to take a stance and to say, you know what? Not on my watch, not in my neighborhood, not in my city. And, let's co create something better.
Right. And the fact that too, as you mentioned, you're inviting, of course, Lauderhill residents, residents of Miramar, all of
Mm-hmm.
South Florida to join. But this is inclusive of everyone, all cultures, all
Yes,
races. It is not, this isn't just happening to one set of people, it's happening to everyone.
absolutely. And, unfortunately, and I don't know if it's unfortunately or fortunately, but the truth is that gun violence knows no zip code, right? It knows no barrier. And so if we all join together, regardless of what neighborhood you're from, the economic status of your zip code, the cultural identity of your zip code, I think peace is one of those things that crosses all barriers. We can all agree that we want a safe, prosperous, and peaceful neighborhood. We can all agree on that. So let's unite around that common factor and rally together for peace. And it is my hope, Tamara, that everybody that arrives at this event will feel so inspired that they'll take what they learn and they'll apply it to their lives, they'll apply it to their family, and they'll apply it in their neighborhood.
Speaking of that, Peace Month 2025 kicking off with a peace rally and resource fair Sunday, June 1st from 3 to 6 p.m. at Lauderhill City Hall. We are speaking with Commissioner Melissa P. Dunn. This is her third year doing this. The Lauderhill City Hall, located at 5581 West Oakland Park Boulevard. Now, I know that this is also a commemoration of National Gun Violence Awareness Month. You're wanting people to register just so you'll kind of know how many will be there, but you also have a special gift for the first 200 people, right?
Yes, the first 200 people will receive our Lauderhill Peace 365 shirt. And Lauderhill Peace 365 is a movement that happens all year long. So come join us, get a shirt, but more importantly, come and join us and take a stand for peace.
I love that. All right. And to get that special prize, if you are the first 200, is lauderhill-fl.gov/peace month. You can always go to their website to get it to actually register. And again, they just want to know about how many people are going to be coming so they'll know how to prepare. But I love that you've been doing this for 3 years, Commissioner Dunn, and that you saw the need and you have put together a vision of trying to end this gun violence in South Florida, and particularly in your city.
Yes, I'm really grateful to have a group of dedicated peace ambassadors that's been a part of the Lauderhill Peace 365 movement for a while. And we're committed to doing what we can for a more peaceful city.
Mhm. All right, sounds good. Again, it's happening June 1st, so that's coming up. That is this weekend, this Sunday. And as Commissioner Dunn said, you can come right after church from
Yep.
3 to 6 p.m. at Lauderhill City Hall, 5581 West Oakland Park Boulevard. And again, this is all part of Peace Month 2025, a peace rally and resource fair. So there will be people there to help. What type of resources will be available, Commissioner Dunn?
Well, we'll have resources from counselors. We'll have resources from different community agencies that really support some of the root cause of violence, right? Like we know that access to resources that promote or alleviate poverty
Mhm.
is one of the key things. So we intend to have resources there to help out with some of those issues.
All right, sounds good. And again, for more information, you can always go to their website, lauderhill-fl.gov /Peace Month. Definitely check it out. And thank you so much for inviting our residents and again, everyone in the state of Florida, the South Florida, if you want
Yeah,
to come and be about peace, to come out on this coming Sunday, June 1st, 3 to 6 p.m. at the Lauderhill City Hall, 5581 West Oakland Park Boulevard for this March for peace. And I am sure that it is going to be a rally for peace that is going to be like none other now in its third year. Congratulations on that.
thank you, Tamara. Thank you.
No problem. We look forward to seeing you again sometime soon on Good Morning Miramar. Thank you so much, Lauderhill Commissioner Melissa P. Dunn, and good luck with this peace rally happening this Sunday.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, Miramar, and welcome to the show. So happy to have you here. I'm your host, Tamara G. As always, you can check us out on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City of Miramar. And with us today, we have one of our good friends from Memorial Hospital. We love Memorial. It is Dr. Brijesh Mehta. He is here to talk about stroke. He is the medical director of Memorial's comprehensive stroke program and also chief of neurointerventional surgery. And I realize that's all a mouthful, but I know Dr. Mehta is going to break it down for us all the way. So welcome to the show, Dr. Mehta.
Thanks very much, Tamara. It's an honor to be here.
So happy to have you and so happy to talk about this because, well, I guess the first thing is first. Can you give us a working definition of what a stroke is and what we should be on the lookout for?
Yes, absolutely. So, it's great to be here speaking with you and educating the community. May being Stroke Awareness Month nationally, so the timing is perfect. Basically, in layman's terms, a stroke is similar to a heart attack. And so, in a stroke, the brain is deprived of oxygen because of a blockage of blood vessel to the affected area of the brain, similar to what happens in a heart attack or coronary artery disease. And so when a blood clot goes up to the brain and it deprives the blood flow beyond it, the oxygen, the nutrients that the brain, the neurons is used to receiving is no longer there as, the normal amount. And so the patient immediately starts to feel the effects of it. And that's where it becomes really interesting to us as neurologists, neurosurgeons, because every part of the brain has different functions. And so, unlike the heart, which is basically just a muscle, the brain has, cognitive functions and ability to, allow us to raise our arms, legs, talk, understand what others are saying, the vision. And so that, kind of figuring out where the blood clot might be based on how the patient presents to us in the emergency department or in the ambulance, that's the really exciting part of, the diagnosis and then the treatment.
So is that why it seems that having a stroke is worse than having a heart attack? I mean, not to take anything away from the heart attack people, but it
Uh,
seems like when you have a stroke, it just you lose everything because it's dealing with your brain, I guess.
yeah, absolutely. Both can be devastating without the heart working properly and sending adequate blood flow to the brain. It doesn't allow us to function and, live independently. And so similarly in a stroke, when there's a blockage of a blood vessel in the brain, that immediately starts to affect us. And so, we always try to educate the community in terms of the signs and symptoms to look out for. Because while some of the functions are very complex and it takes a lot of expertise, from the neurologists, neurosurgeons, emergency department physicians, as well as paramedics, what we've done is try to break it down into the simple form for our community and the residents to understand the signs and symptoms.
Okay, well, let's talk about those signs and symptoms because as with anything, and I know you're as a doctor, you know this, these symptoms could be anything. Like they could be that you're just dehydrated. So you've been out here in this 100-degree weather, and when you come in, you're disoriented. But that's really not something that is supposed to happen on a regular basis.
Right, correct. So, if and that's some of the challenge with the stroke clinical presentation is that sometimes patients may feel that, okay, I'm just fatigued, I had a long day, I'm tired or dehydrated, like you said. Let me sleep it off and I'll feel better in a few hours or when I wake up the next day. And unfortunately, by that time it's too late because just like with a heart attack, time is brain. And so the faster the patient seeks medical attention, the better the outcome. So the acronym that the American Heart and Stroke Association has worked on as a national recognition of these signs and symptoms is called FAST. So face, arm, speech, and time. So if there's any sudden onset of facial weakness, droopiness of the face that, the loved ones, family members would immediately recognize, when they're smiling or talking, they start having slurred speech. So that's the S part of it and weakness in the arm. So if they're holding a cup of coffee or writing, and all of a sudden they drop, the pen or the cup of coffee, the arm becomes very weak, then the time is of essence. So immediately call 911 because, if you try to wait it out or have a loved one, family member drive you to the hospital, we know the outcomes tend to be worse because the treatment, which we'll get into in a second, can be delayed. And so then every minute that lapses, about, 1 to 2 million neurons are at risk for irreversible damage. And so you can imagine that, if minutes go by, 30 minutes, an hour, or if a patient decides to sleep it off overnight, then by the time they come to the emergency department, even if it's by fire rescue and the paramedics, by the time we get our CT scans, the stroke is already very large and it's too late to do anything.
If you're just tuning in, thank you so much for watching Good Morning Miramar. We are speaking with Dr. Brijesh Mehta. He is the medical director of Memorial's comprehensive stroke program. He's also the chief of neurointerventional surgery, which obviously we're talking about stroke prevention. And what are those signs? Again, it's fast, meaning face. If there's a change in your face, drooping, arm, you can't hold something, your speech is slurred, and then of course getting you to a doctor or a hospital on time. I have to tell the story of my mom. She was experiencing the speech part. She was not
Mm,
able to be coherent, and my sister was like, something's not right. And so she immediately went to the hospital. They're waiting in the waiting room, and then I talked to her, and I told my sister, if you don't get in there and tell those nurses right now, mama is having a stroke, because nothing was making sense. She wasn't, it just wasn't coherent. Turns out she was having, is it a TM? It's a small one. It
yeah,
was
TIA. Hmm.
TIA. Okay, so explain that. And she's fine.
Sure.
She actually got back all of her. She has a little bit of memory loss, but she's also 78. Well, 77. If I keep saying 78, she's going to kill me. But 77 and a half. But she did regain a lot of her memory back, and everything. She was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad to hear. It's, stroke can present in so many different forms. Like you mentioned, a person could just be having speech difficulty, or they could be having the entire constellation of symptoms, the facial weakness, arm, leg weakness, and speech problems. So that's what keeps us on our toes, right? Is, understanding immediately what's going on when they present to the emergency department and then trying to discern based on the CT scan where the blockage might be. And so, from our standpoint, we try to expedite the workup as quickly as possible in order to make sure that that blood vessel, that blockage in the brain can be opened up quickly. What your mom experienced, it sounds like, is a TIA, a transient ischemic attack. And so it's also called just a mini stroke. And so a person may experience, for a brief few seconds or up to a minute of problem with their speech or other transient neurological symptoms, but then they completely resolve. And so that's the good news is that they're completely back to normal. So then it provides a false sense of reassurance to the family or the loved ones that, okay, I don't need to do anything. Maybe it was just a one-off. But that is actually a warning sign for a real stroke that could occur, a more permanent disability. And so the data as research shows that if a person experiences a mini stroke or a TIA, that the chance of having an actual full-blown stroke in the next 90 days is about 10%. And so that's pretty significant. And
Right.
so it should not be taken lightly. And that means that they should get to their primary care doctor or to urgent care and seek that medical workup and make sure that the risk factors are controlled.
Right. Okay, we got to get to that. So this was in 2017. So she is doing much better on blood thinners. Tell us a little bit about what, getting those risk factors under control. What are those risk factors? Because it seems like in the African American community, almost all of my great aunts, uncles, they all had a stroke. And, you
Mm.
know, I want to try to not have that happen to me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, it's very similar to as to what we were speaking about earlier in terms of heart attacks. The same risk factors that affect for heart disease, such as high cholesterol, smoking, diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, are responsible for what we call cerebrovascular disease, meaning the blood vessels in the brain can also be damaged due to the same risk factors. And so we always advocate for, compliance with medications if they have any of those risks, especially high cholesterol, diabetes, knowing that some of that could be genetic, but also what's in our control in terms of lifestyle modification, smoking cessation, regular exercise to reduce the risk of obesity. So, for example, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, they recommend at least 30 minutes of exercise 3 times a week. And so to get that heart rate up to 80% of maximum, make sure that we stay fit. And so, we stress the same type of risk factor, control and medications as when a person has coronary artery or heart disease. And, compliance with medications, as I mentioned earlier, is key because once we, make sure that the patient, if they have high blood pressure or diabetes, that the medications are appropriate, blood pressure checkups are done routinely, can have a cuff at home to check their pressure. I routinely tell my patients in clinic, bring a log, a journal of your blood pressure readings so that we can see, accurately if the medication is working or not. And same thing with blood sugar levels if they have diabetes.
Mhm. Well, first of all, I have my Omicron. I have my cuff, and it's on my phone, and so I do check mine at least once a week. But it seems like everything you mentioned, from the cholesterol to the diabetes to the heart disease to the overweight, that's a cultural thing too. I mean, that's maybe one of the reasons why I know it is stroke is more prevalent in African American families, but it can happen to anyone.
Yes, you're right. The epidemiological research shows that unfortunately, Hispanics and African Americans have a higher risk of stroke, and some of it has been attributed to socioeconomic, factors and access to healthcare and timely preventative strategies. And so, a lot of work has been done and currently still undergoing to address some of those issues so that access to health care should be equitable across all ethnicities, and that can go a long way to addressing some of the factors that cause a stroke.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Good Morning Miramar. We are speaking with Dr. Brijesh Mehta. He is the medical director of Memorial Hospital's Comprehensive Stroke Program and also chief of their neurointerventional surgery. And so, Dr. Mehta, I want to talk about what Memorial is doing. Obviously, you say that there is, as the medical director of the Comprehensive Stroke Program, you guys are really at the forefront of trying to do preventative, and then if you do have a stroke, you're dealing with the neurointerventional surgery part of it as well.
That's right. So, for the past 15, 20 years, a lot of work has been done, from a research standpoint, technological advances. If a person is experiencing a severe stroke, then they ought to get to the most appropriate stroke center. And I can explain the different levels in a second. And then timely treatment should be delivered. So traditionally, up in mid 90s to about 2014, 2015, there was only one emergent, time-sensitive, life-saving medication that was available for acute stroke, which was TPA or a thrombolytic. Okay. And that's a clot-busting medication similar to what a person may receive when they're experiencing a heart attack. And so the limitation was that the person experiencing a stroke, the signs and symptoms had to be recognized by their family, usually, or their coworkers. 911 called and immediately rushed to the nearest center that was offering the clot busting medication. So that type of hospital is called a primary stroke center. And so wherever, residents live in our community, they should absolutely know, the different levels of stroke center designated by national accrediting organizations like Joint Commission. So Memorial, for example, has several primary stroke centers, including Miramar Hospital, Memorial Miramar, and Memorial Pembroke. And then there are the comprehensive stroke centers. So if a person has more severe neurological impairments, such as complete paralysis of one side of the body, inability to get words out, what we call complete deviation of their eyes to one side or the other, that immediately gives us an insight that, okay, this person may have a major blockage of a blood vessel in the brain. And usually the clot busting medication, the TPA, may not be enough to open up that blood vessel. And that's where the neurointerventional surgery comes in. So at Memorial, we have Memorial Regional and Memorial Hospital West as our two nationally certified comprehensive stroke centers, where we have 24/7 capability, not just to give the clot busting medication, the TPA, but also rush them to the cath lab. And similar to how cardiologists now perform and have been performing for decades, intervention on the heart, we can do the same thing with the brain. So we do minimally invasive surgery. We go through the blood vessel in the leg, just like they do for the heart. And under image guidance, we're able to get our catheters and devices that are all FDA approved to where the blockage is in the brain and open up that blood vessel by removing the blood clot. So that only was scientifically proven in 2015 by successive randomized control trials, the highest quality trials of its type in the New England Journal of Medicine. So that ushered in a whole new era for our field. It transformed what we were doing overnight. But then it created a lot of work for us also in terms of educating the community so that they knew that if I'm experiencing these symptoms, I need to get to the most appropriate hospital, which should be a comprehensive stroke center.
Not
So
the
we started
urgent
working
care
with
that's down the
paramedics.
street. Not the
Exactly.
urgent
Yep.
care that's down the street. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Because unfortunately, like you just mentioned, I'm glad you brought up urgent care, or if they go to a primary stroke center and they think, okay, let me just go to the nearest stroke hospital, which may be a primary stroke center, then usually a lot of time is lost getting them diagnosed adequately in the primary stroke center with a CT scan and then rushed out again to a comprehensive stroke center. So what we've done in Broward County is actually very, at the forefront, pushing the envelope in stroke care. And that is, we started working with paramedics all over the county in 2015. And we said, look, if a person is experiencing the most severe type of stroke, what we call a large vessel occlusion, and there were now validated scales as a result of this revolutionary treatment called thrombectomy, where we go in and retrieve the blood clot in the cath lab. We educated them that here are the signs and symptoms you look out for. And if they register very high on that severity scale, immediately rush them to a comprehensive stroke center. And so that has actually played a significant role in terms of saving lives. Because now, if paramedics such as Miramar Fire Rescue or Navy Fire Rescue, all the handful of agencies in our encashment area, they encounter any suspected stroke patient in the field, at home, or at their work, they know
To come
exactly what
straight to
type
you.
of
Right.
assessment to do and to also FaceTime us. So I gave them all my cell phone numbers in the ambulance trucks, and they can literally FaceTime me and say, "Here, doc, this we think this patient is, experiencing the most severe type of stroke. Can you take a look?" And what that allows us to do is quickly put our eyes on the patient and activate the cath lab simultaneously so that by the time they're en route to the comprehensive stroke center, whether it's West or regional, we're mobilizing our cath lab teams. And so it's the same thing that's been done for heart attack victims for the past 30 years, we're now doing for stroke. But I can tell you, when these patients, when everything goes well and they get to the cath lab and we're able to successfully retrieve the blood clot in most 90% of the time these days because of the advances in technology, they immediately start talking on the table. They lift up
Right.
their arms, their legs, and were previously paralyzed. So it's pretty amazing.
So, Dr. Maida, what prompts the blood clot in the first place? Like, I know we mentioned the risk factors, the smoking, the lack of exercise, the possibly not eating well, but what would make a clot appear? Like, I don't, again, I don't have a medical degree, so I'm just like, well, what makes that happen?
That's a great question. So, anytime a person has some of the risk factors that we went over, especially high cholesterol, smoking, diabetes, it makes the blood prone to clotting. It thickens the blood, and particularly, it could be the cholesterol plaque within the blood vessels in the neck that can then break off and go to the brain. So that's one source of blood clot. Another one is this is, the way I explain to paramedics when I go to the stations to do training, it's like plumbing 101. Everything starts with the heart because the heart is the pump for the entire body to circulate the blood all over our body, including the brain. So when a person comes in with a stroke, that's when we start our investigation as to where did the blood clot come from. So it could be the blood vessel in the neck, it could be the heart, the chambers of the heart. So one of the conditions is called atrial fibrillation, this irregular rhythm of the heart. And so if it starts to beat irregularly, then the blood starts to hang out within the chamber of the heart called the atria. And then eventually it goes to the ventricle, and then that clot goes to the brain. And so when the heart is not functioning in synchrony, the blood tends to stick around longer, and that's what makes it prone to clotting. And those clots can go anywhere, including the brain. And so, if a person is diagnosed to have this irregular heart rhythm called atrial fibrillation, we end up putting them on more powerful blood thinners beyond just aspirin in order to prevent another stroke in the future. We also know that atrial fibrillation, it increases the risk of having this type of stroke from a more severe blood clot fivefold. So it's important to make sure that, they see their primary care doctor at least annually for their routine physical checkup and to make sure that the heart rhythm is normal. Especially as we get older, this condition becomes more common once we're in our 70s and 80s.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm so happy that you're on to talk about this today. Dr. Brijesh Mehta, he is the medical director of Memorial's Comprehensive Stroke Program and also chief of neurointerventional surgery. You mentioned once again, Dr. Mehta, that the two comprehensive stroke hospitals that Memorial has, the one that's in Miramar, which is out across I-75, and then, of course, the one in Pembroke Pines, right there off of Flamingo and Pines, correct?
Correct. So Miramar, Memorial Miramar, and Memorial Pembroke are the primary stroke centers. And so they have the capability of giving the clot busting medication that we were discussing for the more minor strokes. And if a person is having a more severe stroke, whereas more severe weakness, paralysis, severe speech deficit, then I encourage them to call 911, just like for any type of stroke signs and symptoms that we reviewed. And the paramedics know to go to the comprehensive stroke centers, such as Memorial Hospital West in Pembroke Pines or Memorial Regional in Hollywood. And, that way we can ensure the best possible outcomes for our patients.
All right. So again, don't forget about fast. That is face. If your face or your jaw or anything is drooping, arm if you can't raise it or you drop things, speech if it's slurred or you are sounding incoherent, and time. Get there on time. Do not wait until your son comes home from work to take you to the hospital. Call 911 immediately because there are medicines now and treatments that you can get right back to normal if you guys get it in time, right, Dr. Maida?
Absolutely. And to know that, 80% of all strokes are preventable. And so if a person is, as we were discussing earlier, is having a TIA, or a mini stroke, that should be a heralding warning sign for a more severe stroke. And so, therefore, do everything possible to get the appropriate diagnosis of any of the risk factors, such as the diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and to be compliant with the medications.
All right, sounds good. Dr. Brijesh Mehta, he is the medical director of Memorial's Comprehensive Stroke Program, also chief of neurointerventional surgery. Thank you so much for talking with us today, particularly about stroke, prevention of stroke, and if you are a stroke victim, what you need to do to definitely recuperate, because once those brain cells are gone, they're gone, right? You cannot get them back.
And unfortunately, yes, every minute counts, millions of neurons at risk for permanent damage. And, of course, the older we get, the strokes become more common. It afflicts, many of us because of our risk factors, approximately 800,000 strokes just in the US alone. And so that's why stroke is the fifth leading cause of death. And so we have to do everything possible to educate our community. And that's why it's an honor to be here today.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Mehta. So happy to have you, and Memorial. Thank you all so much for all you're doing to help us with stroke prevention. And also, again, if you have a stroke, then of course there is a comprehensive plan to get you back on your feet. We certainly appreciate you speaking with us today. And thank you for watching Good Morning Miramar. Until next time, I'm your host, Tamara G. See ya.